Is we live? Is we live? Is we live? Yes, you're now tuned into the Rare Podcast. Of course, I am your host of the most, NK, aka the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. We are back for another edition of the Rare Podcast. It's been a minute, guys. It's been a minute. Hope you've missed me. I've definitely missed you. But as you know, I am never alone. I have got a wonderful guest, somebody who I've wanted on the show for a minute. Madam, please introduce yourself and tell the people who you are.
Hey, everyone. Very happy to be here. So my name is Akachi, but I go by Akachi Priscilla. Both are actually my name. So my name is Akachi Priscilla. I am a content creator. So I create content on TikTok. I am a music writer / music journalist. And I'm also a saxophonist.
Sick. You've been appearing on my FYP for like a couple months now consistently. Like I think the first video I saw of you was you talking about Rema.
Okay.
Yeah, you were reviewing Rema's...
the reviewing his album, right?
Yeah, reviewing his album. Yeah. That you appeared on my page then, and then I'd seen you consistently have music discourse. Then, as you said right now, I found that you played the saxophone. I was like, oh my god, this is great.
Played for a very long time.
Yeah, like,
played for a really long time.
To like when were you always a music person? Did you grow up in a musical household? Like, what was your like first instance where you're like, oh my god, like I like this music thing?
Okay, cool. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna try and I feel like this is such quite a long-winded story. I feel like the way I engage with music is like through different mediums as well. It's rather I'm like writing about it, listening to it, or playing it. So my family's like quite musical. Like my dad is like, he plays a few instruments. All my sisters played instruments growing up, and then I played piano. I think I started when I was like 7 or something, and I just wasn't really into it. And I begged my mum for a saxophone like during. It was like primary school, secondary school. Like I begged her for a saxophone. I said, please get me a saxophone. I'll play it all the time. And she was like, yeah, sure. I'll buy you a saxophone. I don't know what prompted this. I think it may have been like Lisa Simpson from The Simpsons. So she bought me a saxophone. And the funny thing about learning a wind or a brass instrument, so any instrument you kind of have to blow in, you're actually so bad for a really, really long time because like it's actually hard to get a good sound.
Yeah.
So I played it for a couple of years, like did like orchestras and bands in secondary school. Then I stopped. And then I picked up the saxophone again, maybe when I was like 17-ish. And then was like, okay, I'm going to be committed to this. So I'm like classically trained. So done all grade 8, was do my diploma, that sort of thing. So yeah,
sick.
Played in bands, big bands. And then I started doing it, kind of taking bookings and stuff. It was like 2020. And that was more so because I was just posting videos online because it was like lockdown, not much going on. I decided to just post myself playing the saxophone. And then I bought a bass because
So like you having like a music like being classically trained and having a musical background, how does that impact the way you consume music as a consumer?
I think it makes me such a critic. I think someone else might refer to me as like a music snob. I wouldn't say I am, but I think the way I'm digesting it is like, not to say I'm, do you know that meme that went by was like that girl that says like she listens to things polyphonic. And I'm not saying that I'm a polyphonic listener, but I will say that I think I'm just listening to like, I'm going to be slightly more critical because I'm like, okay, cool, I see what you've done there, I see why you've done this, but also I think I'm like the kind of like storytelling around why you play things in a certain way in order to evoke certain emotions from certain people. Like I made a Rick Ross video and kind of broke down why Rick Ross's music makes you feel rich even though you may not have the money that he has. So I think from like a technical perspective, that's how I'm breaking it down. So yeah, I gave saxophone, classically trained, cool, do all of that. So bookings and started doing 2020, which I really, really enjoy. I love it and I still do it. So weddings, birthdays, parties, like any function where you're thinking I want a saxophonist, I'm here. Definitely. And then I started music journalism in 2017. So my first post, I had like a WordPress, which I think everybody who started writing had a WordPress. So that was my blog that I started at. My first one was around, it was Gold Link, but I reviewed the album, but then spoke about the context of Go-Go. So like Gold Link is from Washington DC, and then Go-Go is like is like a big genre with it. Well, a genre that was created in Washington, and then like kind of the history around that. So how, am I answering your question? I feel like sometimes someone asks
No,
me a question and I'm like
trust
going,
me.
I just keep talking and talking and
No,
talking.
depth and nuance is important. I think it's something that we lack. So like, please continue.
Okay. So that's how I got into music journalism. And then I started writing for The Floor Mag, which is a literary arts platform which champions like up and coming talent, particularly Black talent. And that's across music, film, TV, theatre. Yeah. And then I've done that with them. So yeah, I think that those are kind of all the facets of how I consume music. So obviously listening to a lot of it, playing it, playing the sax and still sometimes the bass, but mainly the saxophone, and then writing about it. But I think TikTok kind of came as, not saying I got bored of writing, which I don't know if I can say out loud if I've just said like, oh, I'm a music journalist. But I think sometimes I kind of get bored of one way of expressing something. So I think I just wanted to have like a different outlet. And I found that like people weren't really, what are they calling it, an anti-intellectualism crisis, or also a lot of uprising, as they're also referring to it as. I also found that people weren't reading as much. Like people didn't really. I would put out stuff, and yes, it would get traction, and people would like say, "Oh, this is good. I have this opinion," or "I didn't like this as much." But it just wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't being engaged with as much as I thought it deserved. It should have. And then I'm really into video essays.
For sure.
And then I thought to myself, okay, cool. I can kind of start doing video essays online and stuff. But I did have a few articles that kind of like, I think if I think back to those articles, I think, oh, well, that's where I've kind of found my music voice. So I wrote 2 articles, one that I've actually they've both kind of been turned into TikToks on my page. So one was about, it was a series called The Curse of Being First.
Okay.
And the 2 kind of subjects, I guess, for it were Timbo and OG Nikki. So in the context of Timbo, I was like, this is somebody that kind of like started, it was one of like the starters of Afro swing. And within that, people kind of said like, oh no, I believe this person, I think Sona did it, I think this person did it. But I said, in my opinion, Timbo. I think it was Timbo. So I looked, so I just kind of deconstructed it and like looked at the timeline of it. And I think I actually reached out to, I spoke to N to the A, who was a big Afro swing producer at the time. He's still producer, still brilliant. And then I feel like I spoke to Timbo. I think I asked Timbo directly because I had my mutual friend was his cousin. So I think I was like, oh, I really want to do this piece. This is what I'm thinking. Like, I have a few questions, and he was like more than happy to do it. But to kind of summarize that article, it was more or less a case of saying that sometimes your role, there's a curse to being first, because sometimes your role is to roll out the red carpet for everybody else, and you may not get to enjoy
the recognition, the fruits of the labor. Basically, like you've basically conditioned an audience to be like, okay, this is a thing, but then there'll be other people who benefit from you rolling out the red carpet from them.
And sometimes these things are just like, it's just timing. So it's like perhaps you were slightly too early for like labels really taking an interest in like black artists en masse within the UK.
Yes.
Perhaps you were slightly too early before we really like got a handle on how this social media thing works. So yeah, that was Timbo. And then the second one, which I've also made a video about, is OG Nikki.
Absolutely.
So I made OG Nikki was when I made the TikTok, just kind of referencing the article that I made, why has her name escaped me? You're gonna have to crop this part out.
No.
C China,
yes. C China.
So I don't know why her name just escaped me, but so with OG Nikki, when I made the video, it was the TikTok video rather, it was within the context of C China. So like looking at the differences in reception to OG Nikki versus C China, and it's like, okay, cool. So you were just kind of 10 years too early, maybe like 5 to 10 years.
And social attitudes at the time compared to now, when it came to like accepting female rappers in general, and 100%. Then even female rappers being openly sexual, you know, because OG Nikki was like early 2010s, and then C China's like now. There's just a difference in the market in terms of like,
and they're not, I don't think they're that far apart in age.
No, I think OG Nikki's probably in her early 30s.
Yeah, and I think when she came out, would she have been like, what, 9? Was she about 18?
19, yeah.
I could be wrong. So yeah. What was the question again?
No, don't worry. You're basically it was basically just introducing like how you got into like TikTok journalism.
Those were, so I guess, so The Curse of Being First, those were my 2 that did really, really well. And I got like a lot loads of people loved it. Like it was like my most viewed articles, and also like industry people as well were like talking. It sparked like a whole conversation as well. I was like, oh, this is really cool. I remember showing my dad. My dad was like, I don't even know who these people are. But yeah, so I think another thing I feel to say about being musical, I'm also like, I grew up in church. I'm also Christian, so I think the church is probably like one of the best training grounds for being a musician,
for sure.
And I think it just gives you like a natural ear to finding keys, to understanding harmony, to understanding how songs are constructed, and also how songs are again, we're coming back to the technicality thing about like, oh, you being a musician, how you listen to music. But like, I think within church you can start to feel and sense how songs are constructed to like move people and move people spiritually and emotionally as well. So it's like, I don't know if you're religious. Are you Christian?
Yeah.
So do you know in church when they say just the voices? Yeah. Like there is like, and it's just the drums and and it's just like an echo of voices together. Like
there's
that
often,
conjures up something within you. There's
often the discourse of like, especially when it comes to like genres like R&B, because R&B is specifically tied to the church, and gospel and stuff like that. It's like, oh, modern day R&B doesn't hit because of the church, and there is truth to that, because I feel like a lot of times where like, if you look at our classic musical influences, a lot of them do come from church backgrounds, playing bass in church. Even when I look at some people like the composers, right? Yeah. I listen to them, I'm like,
brilliant example.
This is churchy. This is so churchy. This is so like, and like the bombastic nature of like gospel music, infiltrated music. I love when, you know, two worlds, they're not even that separate, but when one thing,
I think they're two sides of the same coin. And there's this brilliant chart. I don't know, when you're editing this, maybe you can like bring it up like Dexter's Laboratory, but it looks at like the funnel, like the chronology of music and how like genres came to be. And then if you kind of look at the timeline of like gospel and R&B, they're more or less like R&B comes from gospel and gospel comes from blues.
It's like a Venn diagram, and they're both like in the middle.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the point you make about the composers, I sent it to I've got a friend and she's from and lives in LA. And I think it was when they did their Jealousy mashup at their residency. Where was it? At the Jazz Cafe. Okay. I sent it to her and she was like, oh, these boys played in church. And it's just like a universal like ear that irrespective of where you are, you can hear somebody play an instrument. It's like, you grew up on church. So it's either you play keys or bass or drums, or even the way you may not play an instrument, but perhaps the way you sing and the fact that you have like a natural knack for rhythm and music. So I think the church is probably like one of the best training grounds. I think music is such a powerful outside of the context of church, it's such a powerful tool, but within the church it's like, it's so important, it's pertinent, it's like it's how the service begins, you know what I mean? So but yeah, for sure, no, definitely, but make sure you check out her stuff. We'll keep all the stuff in the bio. Literally, I feel like you have one of the most like insightful takes when it comes to like music, and I feel like your musical background adds further context into why like I find your stuff mad insightful. Thank you. But it's intentional that I literally sit and I think like, and sometimes I may not want to make a video about something unless I'm saying something new or different. Can I give examples? Should I keep going? No, we're gonna do the rare moment of the week. We can come back. It comes for, this is the segment where we do rare moment of the week. Rare moment of the week is where we like to spotlight a creative, somebody that we thought deserves accolades and attention. I'll go first. My rare moment of the week is an artist called Boy Soda. He is an R&B artist, I believe, out of Australia. Oh, cool. I discovered him through a song that kind of went low-key viral on TikTok called Little Obsession. And then he recently released a project called, let me see, the project is called Soul Star. This project literally released a few weeks ago, and I think it's just a breath of fresh air. And I think when it comes to like the R&B discourse, a lot of people are like, oh my God, R&B's dead, or so on and so forth. I couldn't disagree more. I think R&B's alive and well. I think there's a lot of artists doing different variations of different things. I add them to the power of like El Mean, Sasha Keeble, K1's doing their thing, little Leon Thomas is doing their thing, but I think Boy Soda is definitely an artist that I think people should check out and people, you know, should listen to. So yeah, he's my rare moment of the week. Your rare moment of the week. Oh my gosh. It was actually quite hard to find someone or something. I'm going to shout out the Floor Mag, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it is a literary arts platform which champions up and coming talent, particularly Black talent across the diaspora within TV, music, film, and theatre. The October digital cover just dropped, and it's Ajani Salmon. Why can't I say Ajani Salmon? And he is the writer, director, and protagonist in Dreaming Whilst Black. And I think season 2 came out. So yeah, have a look at their stuff. Have a look at what we do. It's brilliant. And watch Dreaming Whilst Black because it's Black History Month.
Absolutely. But yeah, the main topic of conversation I brought you to today is: are we as music consumers becoming too complacent when finding new music? Because I feel like there's an online discourse of like, it's a cyclical thing of every month somebody says, oh my God, I can't find new artists. I feel like the same new artists are being shoved down our throats. And I feel like there's definitely, you know, from an industry perspective, from the outside looking, there's definitely certain artists being pushed. We understand that, you know, the industry works to push certain people. But I think now that we have access to streaming platforms and we as consumers have so much access to music these days, I think there's a due diligence on our part to outwardly search for these artists and outwardly search for, you know, the next thing. But what do you think about this?
I think we've become so lazy, and I think I would even put myself, all those music accolades that I was talking about before, like I need to do that. I think I would even put myself in that category. I think it's like, I think when you have, there's so much that it's like overwhelming, and then it becomes the illusion of choice, basically. And I think that's where we're at right now. And I think I think we're just very, very, we're all quite lazy, but I think you can kind of see the laziness across not just music. I think you can see it like in terms of, okay, what film am I going to watch? You just wait for the algorithm to serve things. And I think we're so algorithmic, like a lot of our feeds and our entertainment are so based on the algorithm, and it's so hyper personalized. And I think for it, like, I love like streaming platform, so let's say Spotify or Apple Music. I use Spotify, and I thought the personalization of it, I thought it was so cool. But now when you look at it like from a critical lens, you're thinking, oh my gosh, you can listen to the same thing over and over. I can't remember, I haven't updated my playlist in ages, in so long, because I tend to listen just to my like songs, which there are like literally 600 of those songs in there. But then sometimes I'll just go on Spotify radio and I'll just kind of let it do its thing and just wait for me to find something that I like. But no, I think we're very, very lazy and very passive within it. But there's just so much.
Yeah, I think there's I agree. The algorithm can definitely, I feel like, but the algorithm for me in my journey in music, cause like I said, there's times where I'm lazy. Like I struggle to listen to like new albums from new artists because I'm like, oh, like this album, I'm still stuck on this album from a few weeks ago. And also there's like, it's a thing of like, it's a contradictory thing because it's like, I believe, yes, consumers are lazy, but also we move on too fast from things as well. And I feel like the preservation of albums these days, we don't preserve, like an album will be like, this is a sick album and we'll move on from it. Versus back in the day, the way it sounded like is like an album that was great would be held in high esteem for ages. But maybe that's because you had to physically go and buy albums. And because you had to physically go and buy albums, I don't know, there was a much more appreciation for those pieces of works.
Okay, I feel like you're making
two
points. So I think your first point is around why we've become so lazy, I think, and then the second point is why we move on so quickly. So I'm going to try and give my thoughts on those two. So I think why we've become so lazy is because it's just so easy and it's hyper personalized. But I also think it's like they talk about Gen Z being quite risk adverse.
Yes,
and I think that risk aversion you can look at it like on a micro level to how we consume music. We want something that's tried and tested. I know this, so of course I'm going to slap on Spotify radio. Of course I'm going to slap on my For You mix because I know the artists, I know the songs, I know that I'm going to like them. And I think a lot of sometimes the way how we find new artists is through them being co-signed. Like it takes a long time for you to say to yourself, like, I'm going to listen to this person. So so I work in, my day job is marketing. So I work in brand marketing, and I was at a festival for work over the summer and Olivia Dean was there, and I hadn't really listened to her properly, but that's because I'd consumed so much of her music passively on TikTok or on Instagram. But then I'd never said to myself, I'm going to actively go and listen to your album by myself. But then I saw her at the festival, and I was literally like, I can't even find the word. I was like enchanted by her. I was like, oh my gosh, this girl is brilliant. And that then made me go and listen to her. But think about how long that discovery took.
Yeah.
And I think what was the other point? So high personalization, and I can't remember the second thing.
The second one was why we move on from albums or projects like instantaneously.
I think because the barriers to entry are so much lower now, which is a good thing, but it just means, as I said, there is so much choice. There's so much to listen to. There's always so many new releases, and I think we move on. And I think these things aren't exclusive to music. We move on from things
in general,
so quickly, and it's like you should actually perhaps if we spent more time and had more, I don't know, just sat with things a bit longer. And I think even for me, like making content, it's quite. You actually have to be so reactive. Like if an album comes out on the Friday, your review needs to be out by Friday.
And because I was even going to say that because I feel like even the content, like I said, it affects like it's a thing that like it's a domino effect because there's so much stuff coming out and there's like we have to be on trend and on the pulse. I feel like critics and consumers have to form their opinions quickly. There's no time for an album to marinate because like okay. Did I get it instantaneously? If not, then we're throwing it to the side. And I feel like, especially recently, like I've gone back and revisited albums from a year ago. I'm like, oh, I didn't catch that. But the artist in mind didn't make this album for it to be digested and fully understood in about an hour. Like they made it for repeat listens. But I feel like the way, music consumption and just society in general is just very much, okay, we get something, it's very instantaneous. We love convenience. That's why we have Amazon Prime. That's why we have all these. We love convenience. We love, okay, the album's here, I need the next one immediately. Rather than taking an album, listen to it, and digest it over time. Yeah,
no, 100%. I think it's just churn. It's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And I think to myself, like, there are so many albums that I haven't listened to this year that I know I'm going to go back and listen to. So, for example, I really like Venna. But I haven't listened. I've listened to the singles that he released, but I actually haven't listened to the full album. But to your point around churn and like fast foodification of music, if I were to go and make a video about Venna, I don't think people would actually care because Venna's album came out in September, but September was actually last month.
But what it's interesting because as content creators, like we have to be very aware of the algorithm and aware of what people are looking at. But then if we want to like, let's say, be a change, or let's say like you want to talk about the Venna album at some point, do you have to say, fuck, I'm about to bullet, I'm gonna push through just so I can be a voice that's not dictating to the algorithm, just so I can be someone that's like, okay, I'm actually talking about things that matter to me rather than following the algorithm? Do we as content creators have to bite the bullet and say, sacrifice virality for the sake of this is good content?
I think yes and no. It's a balancing act, basically. I think it's really cool to come back to something when you've had time to digest it and listen to it in different settings as well, and then just have like a different opinion. So I think to your point, if I were to make a Venna review now, I would make the video would be quite different. It wouldn't be like a said review. I think you'd have to find something like an interesting angle or something that's kind of like a not pop culture moment, but something that's happening like. Yeah, I guess so. Like a pop culture moment to link to the album and then talk about it. But then also we're slaves to the algorithm.
Yeah.
Like, we actually are, whether it's in terms of whether you're on the consumption end or you're on the creator end.
Yeah.
So.
Because literally, I said, I totally resonate with that because even the artist I have, like, oh, I found it like a little hidden gem. I'm like, I found it mainly through an algorithm just like feeding me, oh, you might like this. Then I found this, then I went that. But I feel like sometimes even though the algorithm may present you something, I think taking that extra step and be like, okay, there's an artist that I haven't heard of that's appeared on my Discover Weekly, for example. But then you taking that step and be like, okay, let me go through their discography, it's still, in my opinion, showing a bit of initiative, even though there was a stimulus. Because I think there's always going to be, especially when it comes to like music or artistic consumption, there's always going to be some sort of stimuli. There's always going to be a recommendation from somebody. But I feel like taking that extra step rather than, okay, this song played on my radio, on to the next one. This song played on my radio, I haven't heard of this artist, let me listen to a few songs of theirs and then listening to an album and then forming an opinion that way. I feel like while the algorithm is very much made to like serve you things instantaneously. I think there's ways to use it to enrich your catalog.
100%. And I think essentially what you're describing is the difference between active and passive listening or consumption. So let's say you just have a playlist on in the background. You think, oh, I like the songs. That's it. I'm just going to keep listening to these songs here. But then the extra step is then to go, okay, cool. I found this song. Let me see where the artist is from. Let me find their Instagram. Let me listen to a few more of their songs. And there have actually been a few artists that I found on TikTok in this way. There's one guy called Sikho. It's Cikho. Okay. He's got a song called Leaving. Great.
Yes, that song's amazing. Yes.
Really, really like his stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's Coming Around by Fliss. I'm absolutely obsessed. It's like, how would I describe the sound? Like country soul pop. I think those are the ways. But Coming Around by Fliss, brilliant. Such a good song. And I think she's got maybe like 10K on Instagram. Like she's definitely like up and coming for sure. But yeah, I think it's about like taking the extra step. But I think it's quite interesting. Like we demonize the algorithm because that's all we have now. But I think for a long time, you only really had radio or TV who dictated what you consumed. So I think now it's a case of where we have like it's the same sort of beast now. One is just kind of like one is in our hand as opposed to something that we're listening to. So I think a lot of the things that you had whether it's like gatekeepers or payola or that sort of thing, those all still exist within streaming. So yeah, but I guess you have less of it's the physical act of like going to a CD shop or a vinyl shop and not allow, or maybe speaking to the people who own the shops and who actually, I'm describing something that sounds so like archaic and like,
but it was the norm.
It was a thing that people did. Speaking to them and then finding music on your own accord. But yeah, I think in as much as like the algorithm can be quite, it's very, very unforgiving. We also have to remember that there was a time the algorithm didn't exist and it was just like radio and TV.
Exactly.
And those were your sources. But also it's quite interesting, like I feel like there are so many other ways to discover music as well. Like I think of some of my favourite songs or why I love certain TV shows even more is because of the soundtrack was so good. And
Absolutely.
I'll give 3 examples. So the first being less of a soundtrack and more of a score, but one of my favourite composers is a guy called Nicholas Britell. I'm obsessed.
Succession?
Yes. Yeah. Obsessed.
Amazing.
So cool. Oh my, I can actually talk about Nicholas Britell. Like I think there's been a few times that he's like commented on my stuff or like responded to my DMs and I'm just literally,
you're a genius.
Oh, starstruck. So the Succession score, brilliant. It's actually one of the best things ever. So discovered him from there, and he also did If Beale Street Could Talk. He did the score for that one as well. So if you like, yeah, he's just brilliant. Second one being Insecure, and Insecure, Issa Rae was like super, super intentional about how she built, I guess, the soundtrack, the soundscape, the score for Insecure, and she also wanted to highlight either up and coming artists or artists from LA. So I think it's for one of the 2 seasons that was the plan.
Yeah.
So it was like Issa Rae, I think Solange did it for a season as well. And then there was another guy that his name actually escapes me, but he's like the main music supervisor. But I found so many songs from Insecure, just literally Shazamming. Like, I really, really like the song. I like how the song makes me feel. So I think, yeah, there are other ways, but I don't know, maybe people aren't Shazamming as much anymore.
Yeah, the art of I love it. I've got.
I'm so shameless. Do you
I've
know
got the widget. I've got the widget right here. Like I'm ready. Just like.
Do you know that meme of Lala when she's like,
yeah,
that is literally me, and I literally don't care. I ask, what's this song?
Yeah.
But I think also to the point I made earlier about risk aversion. I think we as people are more risk adverse. I think Gen Z is quite risk adverse, and yeah, it just means that you're not discovering. There's less. Yeah, we're just not discovering things as much. Even in parties, I don't think you really hear. I don't go to parties and I hear new stuff unless, I think if you go to, like, let me not blanket that. I think if you go to quite like mainstream events, you're kind of going to hear the same songs. It's very rare that somebody's going to play something where I think I would think that DJs are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of like, they can act as A&Rs in a sense. They act as curators. I think there's a chance for them to push out new stuff and for people to hear stuff that they've never heard before. But equally, people just want to hear the same thing, or vice
Exactly.
versa. So
It's a chicken and egg situation. What came first? Are the DJs in these events, because they're risk averse and they're playing the same stuff, are we as consumers now conditioned to hear the same stuff? Or is it our desire to hear the same stuff as consumers conditioning the DJs to play the same stuff? And for me,
it's the grandmother baby, like,
yeah, do you know what I'm
is
saying? Because I feel like in times past, the DJ's role of a DJ was to be the crowd controller and was to introduce the audience to something new. And I feel like there are creative ways to do it, to do that. I'm not a DJ myself, so it might be harder than I'm actually thinking. But I feel like there can be a way, of course, in the final sets when the party has reached its climax, play the bangers. But when people are coming in or when the mood is being set, you can slip in something there in between two bangers, slip in an underrated song or someone you think is up and coming. I think the risk aversion thing is true. I thought, and this is why I think the art of the cosign has been so important. When it comes to like breaking through artists, I think of K1 recently. I think she's been an amazing artist, and I've seen her
for such a long time as well.
For such a long time, but I think the Kalani cosign of, hey, look at her, has really like added and built her momentum, which is a good thing for her. But I'm like, she was good before that as well.
But do you also think it's like where the cosign comes from? Because I think that the cosign is powerful, but also where it comes from is probably trumps that.
Okay.
And if I think not to do the whole like UK versus US thing, but I do think if a cosign comes from somebody external, then sometimes like it's more powerful and people are more likely to listen. But I think it's also a case of like visibility as well. I think there are artists within UK or within the wider diaspora, or like within Africa and the Caribbean, that people just are fine to listen to and are co-sign themselves without somebody else having to do it for them. So.
Yeah. Boy, I don't want to go on a whole UK-US tangent, but I think when it comes to I'll say this, when it comes to the R&B scene in the UK, from the consumer perspective, I feel like there's been talent for years, and I feel like right now it's one of the healthiest scenes I've seen in a long time in terms of like artists breaking through. However, I think of an artist like El Mean, right? This guy just did a Tiny Desk. He's doing shows in the US. He did what's that show with he appeared on Terrell. I think Terrell, the guy, he's a gay African American guy. He has a bunch of guests on this show that do R&B. Terrell.
And he does like the singing.
Yes. I think his name's Terrell. I might be getting his name wrong. Let me even find his name. But he appeared on his show. But when it comes to like UK media and UK press, I don't hear much about him. Same thing about Shea Universe. I think she did a Tiny Desk a few years ago. She did a tour in the States, well, like a mini tour in the States, but I don't see the publications of the mainstream publication. I want to be specific. The mainstream publications showing them that shine. So I think when it comes to UK promoting acts outside of like hip hop or rap, I think in the powers that be don't celebrate our artists the way they should. Because I feel like Ray's been here for years, but then now she's like global superstar, and it's like, but when she was here, where was the noise? Where was the buzz? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've got so many thoughts. I'm trying to like collect them and digest them. Yeah. But no, I think it probably, I don't know. I don't want to take us down like a rabbit hole of like different things. But no, I think it takes us like sometimes a long time to like, particularly within R&B, to like big up our own and be like, oh my gosh, these people are actually sick and they're fantastic. I guess it's probably just like, for me, it looks like it seems like it's more of an underserved genre and one that's not valued as much. But I do wonder, it's like, why are other genres valued more than others? But I don't know whether it's from like, if you think about the whole of the UK, if we just like we don't focus on like London, we think about the whole of the UK, would those people have like an appetite for R&B? You have to think about the UK and remember that people that look like us are actually 3%. And I think that's something when we're always having these conversations, we actually have to remember that. We are, what was it, like 3 or 4% of the UK? So not to say that's the total reason as to why, or like giving or giving an excuse as to why R&B can be underserved and why it is being underserved. But I think there are like, I don't know, that's just like a thought I have in my head. I've never really seen why the UK latch on to R&B from like, I'm like, I might be mistaken. First one that comes to mind is like Lamar or Craig David, but then Craig David was like garage adjacent as well.
Yes.
So you've got a balance to the sound, but those are the only people I can think of who are. If I think of like recent in the last like 20 years, I think those would be like the biggest.
From what I see, from what I remember, because I knew, so it's hard. I'm trying to think, of a UK act. I think we've had artists that have had like.
I wouldn't say Corinne Bailey Ray is like I don't know how I would describe her sound, but I don't think I would think as her as R&B. Leanne Lahavis, would you say is R&B?
Well, yeah, but I don't know.
R&B adjacent.
R&B adjacent. I think so. Mahalia R&B adjacent.
I would say Mahalia is R&B.
Mahalia was R&B. LMA, but LMA was very much formed in the US.
Yeah, LMA is like. I'm not saying I forget she's British, but every time she's
crap. And even in interviews, she said like she moved to the US when she was quite young. So it's like she's British, but like I feel like a lot of her musical career thrived in the US.
I think there is just like, also if you think about it, we're talking about like R&B being underserved and stuff like that, but it's just, the UK is actually very small.
Yeah.
And that's something that we actually have to remember whenever we're having discussions about like opportunities or access or just scale. Like the scale of like, how many cities could you do on a nationwide tour, how many cities can you do in the UK versus how many cities could you do in America? So if you just do like, it's just if you think about, if you quantify it in that way, it makes more, it gives more kind of layers of understanding as to why. I don't know. I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
I agree when it comes to like the wider like UK demographic, right? And when it comes to like, but
you're saying why the people that like us aren't championing?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm also looking at even though we shouldn't be looking to like, I'm gonna just say their name. I know they're not a platform that promote anything positive, but like Shade Bar, I'm just saying, for example, they will promote. I'm just I know it's a bad example. They're the first one that came to mind, right? I know there's so many other ones, but I'm just saying, like, turns out the major platforms, like they will be like, okay, Dave is releasing an album, and kind of like Black UK Twitter social media will be like, Dave, that's our guy. Do you know what I'm saying? And when it comes to the rap sector, I feel like rappers, when it comes to promotion, are well represented. When it comes to 100%. The R&B artists, and the reason why I say that in particular, because these will be the same platforms that will say, oh, why aren't we making great R&B music? These are the same platforms that will generate topics of conversation saying R&B is dead, when in the same breath we have a bunch of R&B artists in this country. So for me, it's not necessarily me looking at the extended UK audience, because I agree with that. Like, we make up such a small percentage, but then within the platforms that we
do control,
I still feel there's that lack of promotion, or that lack of awareness spread to artists that are here, versus in the States. They're doing Tiny Desk, they're doing shows, they're doing, like, El Mean was at the Roots picnic.
Yeah.
So clearly there's,
which is like the perfect setup for him. But also there isn't an equivalent here, unfortunately. I mean, I think, I'm not comparing the recipe to the Roots picnic, but the recipe was actually one of my, to this day, like one of my favorite festivals ever. And I think whenever we're having conversations about like having spaces that serve us, and like making sure that we're valuing and like creating a space for R&B artists, I think like someone like the recipe is actually, that should be happening year on year. I don't know why it didn't happen this year, and I don't know if there are plans for it to run again next year, but it was actually
sensational,
perfect. And imagine if you had like a recipe this year, but with all the artists, like
exactly
with Menedia, with Shea Universe, Sasha Keeble. I mean, like there's so
many Jack James. Like there's
oh my god,
like and that's why
just screaming this. I'm like, great R&B,
and that's why for me, like I'm
even for K1, and do you know what it is? My brain still will read. I will never be able to not read. I have to like force myself to be like K1. Just like
I used to read it as known or something.
I used to
like
read
that.
it as Gwen.
Yeah, fair.
For such a long time, Gwen. That's how I literally read it. But anyway.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I just feel like
there aren't spaces in that way. So I think the spaces just have to be
made,
created, created, cultivated, looked after, whatever verb you want to use. But yeah. Should we get back on track?
Yeah, no, for sure. But see, I told you, you go on tangents, but they're great tangents. What are some concerning or positive trends you've noticed in like the general public's music consumption? Like, and I say this with I asked this question with TikTok in mind, in terms of like how it influences like music consumption. Like, are there any trends that you've noticed? Oh, that's particularly interesting. Or if we continue down this path, it could get pretty grim.
Okay, I've got positives and negatives.
Sure.
I wish I had my notes on my phone. My notes are actually on my laptop, which I didn't then put on my phone. But yeah, I think I kind of more or less remember what I had in mind.
Sure.
Negatives, on which everybody's a critic, but I say that kind of hypocritically because here I am on a podcast with a mic in front of me. But I say like, I don't know when this obsession with numbers came in from normal fans, but everybody's just like, first week numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's incessant and it's actually kind of scary. But I think it comes from stan culture, and I'm gonna blame I'm gonna attribute a lot of it to the most active stans online who I see, who are Swifties, Barbs, and what are Cardi's stans called again?
I don't know.
Bardi Gang, there we go.
Bardi Gang.
I think between those three, I'm like, oh my, it's like back and forth. And I think particularly with Cardi B releasing, her album came out September as well, Am I the Drama? And then just like a back and forth on like what these first week numbers are going to be. And I don't know, I think obviously numbers have always been important, but I think it was like labels cared about it. People who actually they need, in order for them to make money and to keep their job, this album needs to sell a certain amount. But just average people, like normal people who kind of into music are so like obsessed with it, and they will look at something like, they will look at how many albums are sold within the first week as to how good or bad the album is. And I think sometimes that can be a decent indicator, but I think a lot of the time it isn't, particularly where you have people like, where you have instances of like, if you think about like Taylor Swift releasing like 30 versions of one album, how was that
and then our artists doing like bundle packages
and all that type of stuff. So yeah, everyone's a critic, and I know I sound like such a hypocrite. Everyone's a critic, but the people who are critics are really, really obsessed with numbers and actually aren't obsessed with the quality of the music.
I find it a very, and when it comes to like musical discourse, right, I find the numbers argument, in terms of arguing impact, sure, that's definitely like a tangible way of like quantifying things, I think. But when it comes to like the actual like, okay, musical experience, breaking down the lyricism, melodies and whatever, Sophie, who gives a fuck? No, like seriously, like I've never understood like that notion, because it's like, but you saying, oh my God, this person sold 30,000 copies is not going to make me run and listen to the artist. And I think, especially as...
Neither should or would it deter you from listening to the artist.
Yeah. So for me, it's a thing where like, I understand it from a like, okay, if you want to justify why... If you want to add context into, let's say this artist sold poorly, this album sold poorly, and they've transitioned to a new sound because this sound is more marketable, and explaining the trajectory of an artist. Numbers are definitely added context. That's why I think numbers should stay as context rather than major contributing factors to an artist's being good or bad. I don't think that's where numbers should lie. And I feel like people have now added numbers into a conversation of quality, where to me, numbers are a conversation of context.
Yeah, but I think people use numbers as a way to indicate quality and impact. I think you made a really interesting point around we should be thinking about impact, but the only metric that people can understand impact is like, okay, cool, how many people wanted to listen to you within the first week? That's the only way, as opposed to thinking about like, what's the likelihood of you revisiting this album? What's the likelihood of you deciding to go to a festival just to see this person, or buy a ticket to the tour? I think that's how you can measure these things. But those are more, I don't know, those are numbers that people just don't have access to as much. Sorry, my forehead feels bare shiny. Give me 1 second.
No worries.
Give me 1 second.
Because when you talk about impact, right, I think
Can I block my forehead?
Yeah. Sure. The camera will be on me. The camera will be here.
Okay,
but I think of like something like impact, where we look at a song like, for example, Diana Ross's "I'm Coming Out," right? that song is a major anthem in the queer community, right? And that's something, I don't know if she wrote that with the intent of that, but that's an impact that the song has. And for me, that's like, all impact can be, something can be like, for example, Candy is now become, you know, a cultural anthem that is now played at weddings or whatever. That's a way, but I'm sure those songs have crazy numbers and crazy, but that's a way you can judge impact without necessarily looking on the spreadsheet and being like, this album sold X amount. For me, I just think the numbers conversation has a place, but I think it's taken precedence over other components of musical discourse.
Or like how good the music is. I don't know. And I think you should be able to say something is bad. Like I'm not really of the opinion that music is purely subjective. I think sometimes you can actually listen to something and be like, oh my gosh, this is actually really bad.
Yeah.
And I think you should be able to say that, oh, this is actually crap.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think those would be my main negative point, things that I'm looking at. And also just kind of, there's almost like an insatiable appetite for newness all the time. And I think you made the point earlier about, okay, this album has come out on a Thursday, Wednesday, okay, Friday, most likely. But by next week, you're like, okay, cool, where's this artist gone? I don't know why, like, everyone wants stuff new all the time. I don't know. I think that's something that's quite negative, and I think it's like this kind of churn that we have. So things have such a shorter shelf life as a result of it. So I think about something that came out in March would be considered super old. You can't even remember what came out in March. I think probably an added layer of that is the fact that there is so much coming out, but like, yeah, there's just like, I think I saw a tweet the other day. And I was like, oh, Doechii has been so quiet. Like, has she forgotten us? I was like, what?
She just had one of the biggest breakthrough years. So it's so funny you said that, because like literally an artist that had such a breakthrough year that she was getting industry plant allegations has now had a quiet period, as you do, and then now it's a cause for concern. That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah. Maybe bring out like longer lead times on like albums and stuff like that, or how you engage with your fans. I don't know. I think those would be my main negatives. I know I'm being like interviewed here, but I want to ask you, what are your negatives?
My negatives when it comes to music consumption, I think into the intellectualism point, I think there's a lack of, I don't know, I think there's a lack of care when it comes to respecting credentials. When it comes to like, when it comes to, for example, like, for example, when it comes to like, this is my thing when it comes to like music journalism, all right? And I'm not somebody who's classically trained or anything of the sort, but I feel like there's people out there who are experts in their field. For example, like you said, you've played multiple instruments, but I feel like a lot of the time the opinions of like legends or the opinions of like people who've been in the industry are dismissed. I remember when Mos Def had the opinion of like Drake, right? And then like it was like, who the fuck is Mos Def? And it was like, you don't have to agree with him, but I feel like the poo-pooing, the rubbishing of people who are credentialed in their fields by audiences happens way too often for me, and I'm uncomfortable with it.
Okay, I agree. However, I think it's a case of where, you know, the point I made, everybody's a critic.
Yeah.
So everybody's opinion matters way more and is way more significant. And also it's a case of like, I don't know, not to make everything super like Gen Z focused, but I think it's quite an interesting age, like generation to look at in terms of music consumption.
Yeah.
So I think some people had a mix of physical and digital. Some people had purely digital. They actually don't care what Mos Def has to say. They actually don't care.
Yeah.
They really, really, really like, they don't think his opinion matters at all. And I think it's really hard to like explain to somebody who doesn't care why they should care, because their tastemakers and the people they view with credentials have like, I don't even think people would see them as credentials. They're perhaps their own generations like tastemakers, or like a lot of streamers, or like their own influencers. I think things like that, they don't look at, they're not the what's the word I'm looking for? I think it's something like, they're not the guards that people are looking to. They like,
so and I think so, because I made a video on this funny after the other day, when it's like, I think a lot of like current a lot of Gen Z music tastemakers, critics don't go back and listen to like stuff that's not of the era they were in.
Really?
And I feel like, I don't know, I don't want to be one of these guys who's like, oh, like I don't want to be like an old head or whatever, because I do believe like you should definitely champion and protect the music of your generation, absolutely. But I feel like there was a conversation that I saw that was about the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, right? And they were ranking like the diss tracks amongst the greatest diss tracks of all time, and then somebody mentioned, oh, what about Ice Cube's Nose Vaseline? And this was like a pretty big voice when it came to like musical commentary, but social media commentary as well. And they were like, not who the fuck is Ice Cube, but like, I've never heard No Vaseline, right? And I feel like if you're in a position, if you're on a platform where your opinion or your voice is going to be amplified on a specific musical topic, I think it's important to like do your research. And I feel like there's a lack of care when it comes to that discussion on major platforms. If it's just a barbershop conversation that happens to be filmed on TikTok and then goes viral, it's one thing. But if you're being commissioned by an institution for your opinion on, you know, music, and it's an important topic, I feel like you should have your facts in order. You don't have to agree. You could think No Vaseline by Ice Cube is whack, right? But at least have knowledge of the track.
Knowledge of what it is.
And I feel like there's a anti-intellectualism. I think there's a lack of respect
A lot of uprising.
yeah. I think there's a lack of respect of what came before. There's a lack of like, for me, like, I wouldn't trust your musical opinion if you're not somebody who doesn't dig into the archives. There's always going to be gaps in your knowledge, for sure. I'm not saying you need to be a historian, but I feel like the passion and the care can't just be isolated to the era that you live in.
100%. And also I think there are so many references that you will just not understand, and you will think to yourself, as you are the inventors, the first, the only. And my dad always says, like, basically living with my dad is literally just like boomer versus Gen Z, like all the time. That's all we argue about. Like intergenerational arguments are just, that's what we do. And he said, your generation are a bunch of Tomb Raiders. All you do is go back to see what has been like created, whether it's in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You just go and sample it, you just go and recycle it. But to him, I often say, like, isn't it better that we know what's come before us, as opposed to having no knowledge of it at all? And to your point, like, of course there are always going to be gaps in your knowledge, but I think you should have an idea of who these people are and what they do. But I think it's also, I don't know, I think it's just like a wider thing where nowadays it's where you can have somebody, so right now, cool, I'm on this platform, I have a mic. This mic and these fancy lights that are shining on me put me in a position of power, authority, so I can speak and people will listen. People, like, I don't actually have to list my credentials. I don't have to be very well versed or super knowledgeable on what I'm saying. I can just speak with conviction and authority and people will listen to me. And I think that's what you're having with said, like, new tastemakers who don't know anything of the past, where they're speaking, again, as I'm here now with a mic and lights and just spewing whatever.
Yeah. Like because I've had this conversation before, when it's like people will offer the counterpoint of, yeah, but doesn't that sound gatekeeperish? Doesn't that sound like you're gatekeeping? Because the whole point of, like, because we spoke about the accessibility of music before, and we spoke about like how radio often dictated our tastes, and now, yes, we've got an algorithm, but I would say we have more freedom in our choices of music. And even when it comes to our tastemakers, our tastemaker can come from somebody literally filming in their room and becoming a tastemaker, and it stops. It allows for more diversity of cast and diversity of opinions when it comes to musical platforms. So, but if you're selling everyone that they have to be credentialed or they have to know top 50 albums, doesn't that take away from like the authenticity? Doesn't that take away from anybody being in those positions?
Sorry.
No worries. But yeah, because I've heard the counter argument of you're basically advocating for gatekeeping.
I just think people don't want to read. I think when people come with the rebuttal of like, oh, you're advocating for gatekeeping, you sound like a gatekeeper, it's just a resistance to them reading. Genuinely, I think they don't want to engage. They don't want to engage and do the research, so they're just saying, no, you're being a gatekeeper. And it's like, no, just read up something if you don't know. And as we're speaking here, like, there are so many things, a lot of things that we do know, and equally there are so many things
that we don't
know. But and the gaps that there are gaps in my knowledge that you plug, and I'm sure there are gaps in your knowledge that I plug as well. But yeah, if anyone says that to you, it's just like, oh, you're being gatekeeper. I just don't want to read.
And I think why is there such an adverse reaction to learning? Like, I feel like if you're in a position where, like, if I present to you, okay, like
within music or in general?
In general, like, why is there such an adverse reaction to knowing things and learning? And like, I know why, but I can assume why.
Okay, I think I have thoughts.
Go on.
I think people are really lazy.
Fair.
Unfortunately, and I think again, we've spoken about this kind of like having access to so many things and being served by cosigns or algorithms or whatever. You're not really having to think and engage and think about what you would actually want to watch or listen to by yourself. So I think people are just like very, really, really lazy. I don't know. They don't want to. I think it's laziness and not wanting to be challenged. I think not wanting to be challenged is probably a bigger point, and like not wanting to be wrong and exist in your own kind of echo chamber of where we all agree. And again, a lot of what we've been talking about is around music consumption. I think one of the questions you asked around what are the negatives we're finding with music consumption right now. I think one of the negatives is the fact that we all kind of exist in this kind of micro space echo chamber where it's like, this is my superstar, this is what I listen to, this is what all my friends know and who I know, and I have no idea of anything else. I don't know what you listen to because like your superstar is completely different.
Yeah, for sure. To end it off, what would you say, have you noticed any positive trends recently when it comes to music consumption? If you haven't, it's fine.
Positive trends. Again, the point I just made around echo chamber, this speaks to that because I could be wrong. But what it does feel like is right now there is a shift from the West and Western superstars. So if I think about Bad Bunny, okay, granted, Bad Bunny is American, but he sings pretty much 95% in Spanish. Well, Puerto Rico is part of America, by the way. Before someone's like, he's not American, he's Puerto Rican, which is part of America. So yeah, let me start again. So I think one of the positive things that I'm noticing within music is the fact that there is this like desire and appetite for things that are non-Western. So if you think about the rise of K-pop, if I think about an artist like Bad Bunny who sings in 95% Spanish, or more or less 100% Spanish, who decided he was going to do all of his shows in Puerto Rico. If I think about the rise of an artist like Rema, when I saw Rema in India, I was like, I was like, this is amazing. So I think about the fact that there are people who are the global superstars now, like The Guard, like there's been like a changing of the guards in that sense. And I think also, if I think about us, how we consume music on TikTok, there are so many things that haven't been discovered or so many viral moments that are not in English. And what springs to mind is I think it was 2021, 2022, the Somali singer Nimco, she had the song Happy. And it was like a song that it just like that sparked joy. And I guess maybe at the time people needed a lot of joy and just wanted to find something different. But there were like people loved the song, like resurgence of her career and going and doing all these interviews. I think similarly another thing from another group of another set of Somali musicians, they're called the Durdur Band. So they've got a song that's going viral on TikTok right now. I don't know what happened, but it just went viral. They blend basically disco, soul and funk. They were really big in the 80s. I think Disclosure actually sampled one of their songs, and then they came under fire because I don't think they properly cleared the sample and kind of went into all the whole conversations about like I don't know, white artists taking from black artists. But yeah, they disbanded in the 90s because of like the political unrest within. They were forced to disband rather in the 90s because of the political unrest in Somalia. But then now there's a whole generation of people who aren't Somali, people who aren't black, aren't from Africa, who are just consuming their music. So I think that gives me excitement. And yeah, I don't know, I think for a long time I think particularly living in the West, you forget you live as a minority, but then you forget that you are actually the global majority. So when you see trends like this, it's like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Or whether it's Thames or Tyler or like the rise of Afrobeats and Amapiano around the world. I think those are things that excite me as someone who lives in a country that is where majority of the country doesn't look like me. Yeah. So
that's great.
Very long-winded, but yeah, that's what makes me excited. Like the changing of the guards, that the fact that we're living in a time where the global superstars aren't most of them aren't from Western countries, or they perhaps don't sing in English. So you have sing or rap in English. So you have this like cultural exchange that happens and I think music is music, and I think particularly the way, as we spoke about social media, the algorithm is such a brilliant way for a cultural exchange to happen, because I've just told you about this band called, I'm going to make sure I get their name right. Wait, the Durdur band, and like the context of like political unrest within Somalia in the 90s. I would have had no idea about that if I hadn't heard the song, loved it, and then gone into it. But yeah, I think that's something that I think is quite exciting. I do think it's quite interesting, not to get too political, but I do think it's quite interesting that I'm noticing this trend of the rise of the non-Western superstar, but then you also have concurrently you have like
white
rise
nationalism.
Of nationalism around the world.
Around the world.
It's kind of frightening. It's not even kind of. It's very frightening.
But there's a correlation there.
Yeah, 100%.
There's a massive correlation there.
When I've had these thoughts, I said to myself, these things, like, they don't happen,
exist in a vacuum.
Yeah, literally, they don't happen in isolation. They are somehow linked to each other. But yeah, I think that's really, really exciting. I think that's quite exciting. I think I've ticked off all the artists who I can think of. You've got Rema, you've got Bad Bunny, you've got general Afrobeats, Amapiano. I think those are people. But if you said, like, nowadays, if you said to someone who wasn't from the diaspora or from Africa, like, they would know Wizkid. They would know. How can I forget Burna Boy?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. It's Burna Boy within that.
Tyler, Iris, that.
Yeah, Burna Boy, Tyler. So yeah, I think that's very, very exciting.
Yeah. I think the positive trend that even though I've like complained about social media recently, I think it's given access to voices such as yourself and other voices in music that traditionally would have to go through very, very difficult roads to get platformed. And I feel like the ability for educated up-and-coming content creators to grab a mic and like spread their opinions globally on a platform is amazing. Despite, yes, there being algorithms, I probably found your work through an algorithm bias. Let's be like, through an algorithm bias. That's true. However, like, I feel like voices such as yourself and other voices, I'll even give shout outs. I feel like there's a content creator called Her Music Room.
I love her.
Like, she's dope. She's dope. There's a guy called sorry if I butcher your name, bro. He's got a really South African name, Nkukuleku. He's like an R&B content creator. Amazing content, like just visually stunning stuff.
There's so many people that I'm not going to remember their ats now.
Sick the Beat podcast, Melissa D. Like, there are so many content creators in the space having poignant conversations about not just music, but the arts in general. Because if we go to film, there's the post-credit scene podcast. I could be here for days. But the point is I feel like normally you'd only see these people through traditional media platforms. But through social media, like, it allows us access to other creative voices. And what those voices do is I feel they influence conversation. They help change the way we discuss things. They help influence the discourse that we have. And I feel like despite the negativity of social media at times, I feel like there is the other side of the moon where there's like so many brilliant conversations. And what I want to do is kind of just push those conversations to the front of to the forefront, because I feel like there's so many good, because we have discourse, and off topic but on topic, we have discourse about plantain Twitter, these regurgitated topics all the time, but I feel like there are so many poignant and interesting conversations happening within the UK or within the general content sphere that need to be pushed to the center. Now, there's a whole conversation on how and why that's the case, but for me, I do feel like that's a positive element of music consumption and social media as a whole.
No, I agree. And it's like only through creating content did I meet such cool people and connect with such amazing people. Like, there have been a few instances where I've been at day parties and people come up to me like, "Oh, I think your content's really cool." I'm like, "This is thanks."
Exactly.
For Nolo as well, Her Music Room, like, I connected with her. I was like, "Oh, I think your content is really fantastic." There's another girl called Kessie. She does like
Kessie's amazing.
Kessie,
Yeah, I've seen
she
her
does
stuff,
weekly roundups. There is another guy and his name escapes me. It's great. It's actually going to irritate me. Wait, give me a second. Let me find him.
No worries.
Let me find him. Yeah, so his name is Saint Adamson. Have you seen him?
Let me see.
He's actually so sick.
Seen him.
Yeah.
He's cold.
His content's really, really cool. I'm trying to think if I've missed anyone out. Obviously Mimi, the music blogger, her stuff is great.
Cold.
But no, I think it's really cool to be able to like find your own voice on TikTok. And I think I've been doing, how long have I been on TikTok for now? Maybe since the beginning of last year. And it's only then, I think it's interesting. I think you kind of have an idea of what your voice is going to be, but then you learn how the platform works, you learn how the algorithm works, and then that kind of forces you to decide what type of voice you're going to have. I think you can, like, the algorithm chooses your voice essentially.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what I would. But you also still have to be like authentic within that.
But it's like you said, it's also community building as well, because like you like you've said, people have come up to you outside and said, "Oh my God, your content's amazing." And whether or not like our relationship's been formed from that, I feel like people can now find a sense of community through voices like yourself and others.
The classic Manny, forgot.
yeah, for sure. So I feel like like that element, the community building element, is what I love, because I feel like on social media there's so many conversations that happen, but I feel like bringing those conversations into real life and allowing people to connect is such a powerful tool. And not to be not to get on my Karl Marx stuff, but like community support is important basically.
No, it is.
Yeah, but this has been an amazing conversation. I definitely will have you back on, because there's definitely a lot of stuff we could touch on for sure, but for now we'll leave it here. But let the people know where they can find you and what you got going on.
So you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Akachi Priscilla. So that is AKACHIPRISCILLA. And that's where you can find me talking about all things music, sometimes with a sprinkle of marketing, and then playing the saxophone as well. And if you're ever looking for a saxophonist for a wedding, a birthday, a private function, any sort of event, multi-genre, I do it all. So have a look at some of my videos, and then you can just book me through there. And you drop me a message. Find me on my website akachipriscilla.com. So yeah,
definitely make sure you book her, make sure you get her on your platforms. Definitely
book
support.
me, guys.
Book
I'll
her,
come on your pod
for sure, 100%. But in the meantime, if you are still here, make sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. Make sure to tell a friend what were the most engaging parts of this conversation. Let me know. Let us get to 10k followers on TikTok. We are very close. To 10k. So close. But this has been an amazing episode of the Rare Podcast. I have been your host, NK, and we will catch you on the next one. Deuces. Peace.